What is up, everybody? It is your local Ottawa fan, and today I'm here to talk about the 6-3 loss to Montreal. This was just a brutal loss. The score is a lot worse than the game actually was. I'll get into the breakdown, but again, there's a few things I want to get into beforehand. The first thing is that after a 5-game losing streak, we also have 3 points in 5 games. In 4 of our past 5 games, we have gone pointless, just completely pointless. And I think it's panic time. I think it's time to hit the panic button. Some I've actually seen, like on the subreddit and on other social media. Some people, it's past panic mode. They're already packed up, looking towards the draft, looking towards next season. I don't think we're quite there yet. We are still 2 games out. I know we don't have any games in hand anymore, but Boston has 5 more points than us. They're in 4th place. You know what? That's 2 regulation wins. The key is you got to get those wins. We haven't been getting them. In this game, our offense did show up. We got 3 goals. That's not bad. For a team that is built on its goaltending and on its defense, 5 goals is unacceptable. And I think a 6-3 final score is exactly what Montreal was looking for. They are a high-flying, high-scoring offense. They made us play their game. And you see a score like 6-3, and I've always said Ottawa's never had a bad game. Ottawa's never had a bad game. And you would think that this would be the one where I'd finally be like, yeah, no, we just sucked. And that's the thing. Even this game, we still pretty much went blow for blow. The 3rd period is when it became like just an offensive heavyweight battle. They scored, we scored, they scored, we scored, they scored, and then they potted an empty netter to seal it off. But, even from that, that doesn't look that bad. Each individual period, we did well. The 1st period, we ended tied. The 2nd period, we almost got out of it tied. And if it wasn't for a back-breaking jailbreak goal, we would have gotten into the 3rd period tied. But almost isn't good enough anymore. I think that, now it's officially panic mode time, where either we need to see changes in the results or we need to see changes elsewhere. And I've even seen, some people have already floated around firing the coach. I mean, we are half a season in. Not half a season into this season, though we are, but also just half a season in to the team existing as a whole, to the league existing in general. And the fact that we're already floating around fire the coach. And as much as I want to say I'm completely against that, at the same time, it's hard to argue with 3 wins in 12 games. That is an abysmal record, especially for a team that shouldn't be this bad. You look at the league, there's a lot of parity throughout the league. Even the plus minus, the highest plus and the lowest minus, which I believe we hold, it's not completely atrocious. We do have time, 12 games left, 5 points back. That is very doable in this league. I mean, you look at Toronto and Minnesota, for example. At the start of the season, Minnesota looked completely unstoppable, and Toronto looked dead in the water. I even said I think Toronto is the first bad team in PWHL history. I think we have safely stolen that title from them. I think that's our title now. But at the same time, a 3 or 4 game stretch can swing things completely the other way. If we can string together a few wins, all of a sudden, things might look differently. The problem is we can't. In fact, I don't think we've ever gotten back-to-back wins, which is just disgusting. 12 games into the season, you should have back-to-back wins. I'm not even saying back-to-back regulation wins. They could be back-to-back overtime wins for all I care, but you need to have something like that. Our next game is against Toronto. Toronto has been red hot as of late. And I think this is perfect, because Toronto's also the only team that we were consistent against. We've played them twice. We beat them twice, both in regulation. I think you have to beat Toronto. Because if Toronto beats you, then that shows that other teams can take the momentum and run with it. Toronto was doing bad at the start of the season. We beat them twice. But then when they started getting good and started stringing some wins together, then when they faced us again, we lose. Whereas with us, we had some overtime losses. Oh, we got a win against Boston. We faced Boston again. Oh, no, we lost that one. Oh, we lose in regulation to Montreal. Montreal, who's beaten us 3 times now. Minnesota, who's beaten us 3 times. Half of our games have been against Minnesota or Montreal. We have not won a single game. Conversely, the other 6 games, where 3 wins, 2 regulation losses, 1 overtime loss. It's not terrible. That's above 500 in this league. That's good. But it makes me think, okay, this season is salvageable if that's what the situation is. If Minnesota and Montreal just have our number. And that's why we're doing so bad, because we've just seen them a lot at the first half of the season, and then we'll face New York and we'll face Toronto a couple of times in the second half of the season, and we'll get all our points there. Then I'm okay. But there's a big part of me that's worried that no, now that we're doing bad, now that our record is poor, will it get into our heads? And will we start losing games against those teams as well? I'm in panic mode right now. I think if we lose to Toronto, even I'm going to be like, yeah, it's just about time. I think that we are 2 losses in a row. Any kind, even overtime, even if they're back-to-back overtime losses, we are 2 losses in a row away from me being like, it's next season time. If Boston wins and we lose in any capacity, if Boston wins in any capacity and we lose in any capacity, we are 3 games back out of the playoffs. That's a tough hole to dig out of if we've got, say, 10 games left in the season. That puts us in a terrible position. And we are in a terrible position. We're at the midpoint of the season, and we are 2 wins back, an overtime win and a regulation win back from the last playoff spot. Not from first, not from second, but from playoffs. And we're a win behind New York, who holds 5th place. So there's 2 teams that we need to catch up with. This is a bad situation to be in. So we'll quickly get into the game. I felt Montreal right out of the gate. They had a lot of chances. They were trying to make us play their game. Lots of chances, playing very fast, playing a high-octane game. And I think it took us a little while to try and settle things down. And I mean, after 5 minutes is the first time that I think we had a real chance, of any capacity. And Debian, she stood tall. Debian's normally elite, and she was very good this game. But I think that's the thing. We got 3 goals against her today. This was really an opportunity. I think this was a blown opportunity. We got 3 goals against Montreal, a team that's had our number all season, and this has to be the game where we let in 5. I don't think we've ever let in 4 regulation goals, let alone 5, let alone 6 with the empty netter. Like, the first time that we just do not show up offensively, or we do not show up defensively, our goaltending isn't quite there. And let me be clear, Emrys Maschmeyer has been elite through the first 11 games. She's kept us in so many games. She's stolen us a win or 2, I'd even say. Like she's been great. She has been great. And she can't be perfect every single game. But damn, do I wish that she let in 5 when we played Boston and lost 3-1. If our offense doesn't show up and our goaltending and defense doesn't show up, whatever, we just got blown out and we had a bad game. But our offense finally shows up. Our offense finally gets 3 goals against Montreal, and our defense and goaltending disappear. I don't want to blame this loss on Maschmeyer. I think that's unfair to her. She's done so much for the team. You're allowed to not be perfect every once in a while, but it just feels like the timing of it. It stings. And right as it looked like we were starting to even out the first period, we take a penalty. And this was a really good power play by Montreal. They got a whole bunch of chances right off the start. They had heaps of pressure, and on the penalty kill they make us pay, and it's 1-0 Montreal. And right after that they almost make it 2-0. Like I said, Maschmeyer, she did still play. She made a few big saves that at least kept us in it, and we were very, very lucky to keep it at 1-0, and it did not take long. And this is something that I love to see. Akane Shiga, her first ever PWHL goal, tied at 1 apiece. And good response. Again, Montreal has a chance right after. This game, Montreal played one of their best games. And this is probably the best team in the league. They really brought it to us today. The fact that we even hung in it, again, that's a good sign. But I think we're past the time of having good signs. I think it's time for results. I think we're past the good sign. I think it's time to get good results. But I think throughout the first, we ended up finding our footing. We kept up with Montreal. And, for the rest of the first, although there were a few chances, the defense stood tall. I think the rest of the first period, we settled things down. The same could even be said for the second period. The second period, for the most part, we played a fairly even game. The second period, I think, was by far our best period, despite the fact that we didn't score. We had a few good chances to start out the second. I liked our start in the second period. I thought we looked good. I thought we looked hungry and aggressive and competitive. I was very happy to see that we stuck with them in the first period. They came out flying, and then to see us in the second period kind of match that intensity was good. But I think everybody knows what the story of the second is. Yes, we had a penalty kill that we killed, and we actually had 2 power plays. Our first one we didn't capitalize. Our second one, late in the game, or the period, sorry. Late in the power play, give it up to Claire Dalton, and she comes flying in. Great move, and it is a back-breaking, jail-breaking goal. It is with barely any time. Barely any time on the power play, and with barely any time in the period. There was, I think, less than 2 minutes. And, I wanted to hide. That is, and I've said it before, that's the worst way you can go into the third period. Thinking that, we've got some momentum, at worst it's tied, and not only do you get scored on, it's a jailbreak. That's the worst kind of goal to give up. Claire Dalton, I gotta hand it to her. She had a hell of a game. She had a hat trick. A hats off literally to her. She played great, and honestly, I think she was the biggest reason for Montreal winning. This was the goal that really shifted momentum. Even though it was only 2-1 going into the third period opened up, and there were a whole bunch of goals. Normally I'm trying to talk about little things I noticed in each period, and the third period it's just the goals, because there were so many goals in the third period alone. There was 3-1, 3-2, 4-2, 4-3, 5-3, 6-3. There were a total of 6 goals. 6 goals. 4 for them, 2 for us in the third period alone. I mean, as a hockey fan, it was great. As an Ottawa fan, it was the worst. It was the worst to see. Immediately in 2 minutes, we go down 3-1. It was blown coverage. And Sophie Betez, there was just nobody who went on her. Both defenders, I think, were caught looking the wrong way. And she basically had a free break, and she scores. And immediately after, Daryl Watts' huge clutch goal brings it within 1. We're right back in it, 3-2. A huge rebound off of Mrazova. I cannot say how great Watts and Mrazova have looked over these past few games. They are, I've been saying who my favorite players are. It's been flip-flopping between a few. Right now, it's got to be Watts and Mrazova. They have just looked great in the past few games. They have been a bright spot on this offense. People have, thrown around, who would we keep? Who would we trade if we are going to have to retool or rebuild? Watts and Mrazova, do not touch them. Do not even think of touching them. They have been the brightest spots. I think them and Adja have been consistent offensive, consistent offensive, I'm forgetting the word, contributors. Consistent offensive contributors. I cannot imagine what this season would look like without them, because they have gotten us a few really big goals when we needed it. And again, it's like you blink and it is 4-2 off of Dalton's second goal. And this is where, I kind of thought, okay, this should be it. We should be done. And Montreal takes a penalty. And then literally 2 seconds off of the faceoff, they take another penalty. They gave us an excruciating long 5-on-3. And I thought, this is it. Like, we either score here and get back into the game, or we don't. And then, we can pack it up. And Mrazova, again, she comes up huge. Another clutch moment. In these past few games, Mrazova has been one of the most noticeable players on the team. I think that she's really making an argument to be an all-star. I think at the next, NHL all-star game, where they have some PWHL players, I think Mrazova's really made a case that she should be one of them. And again, in this long 5-on-3, power play goal brings us back within 1. Okay, now we have momentum, right? Twice we were down by 2. Twice we brought it within 1. So now we're going to keep it on, right? We're going to keep going. We're at least going to bring them down to the final buzzer, right? We're at least going to keep things competitive. Nope. Because Dalton burns us for a third time this game. In a very short amount of time. You think from the very, very end of the second period to where she scored her last goal in the third period, it was probably less than an actual period of play. Yes, it started in one period and finished in another, but it was in a very short amount of time that she just went 1, 2, 3, and she gets the hat trick, and that seals it. When she scored to make it 5-3, I knew we weren't getting 5 goals in regulation. We've done that once against Toronto when Toronto was not looking good. And we pull our goalie, and it felt like instantly Maureen Murphy just really ices the game. 6-3. Maschmeyer played good for the first 40. The third period dropped their save percentage to I think less than 800. It was an offensive third period. And like I said, this team is not offensively built. And if we are going to end up rebuilding or retooling, that's what's going to have to happen. We're going to need to get more offense. So I really don't know what else there is to say. I think that, it's panic mode time, and we got to start getting results. I don't know what else there is to say. Montreal just outplayed us. And as always, go Ottawa, go.